My wife wasn't too thrilled about going to work, and those long commutes on public transport drained her. Sure, you don't have to drive, and there's always time to tidy up or cook something, but I never imagined that this would eventually lead to the end of our marriage. Evelyn kept working at her job with one of the big food distribution companies. At the same time, she was sending out resumes for remote positions. This went on for about 2 weeks. Then, one day she got an email from a major bank. They offered her a chance to undergo free training and work as a loan operator, helping people apply for loans. The job seemed pretty appealing, a solid salary and a commission on sales. And the best part? All they needed was a computer, a stable internet connection, and a headset, which we already had. She excitedly told me about the job offer. "Anthony, you won't believe it. This could be a great opportunity," she said. I wasn't exactly sold on the idea and voiced some concerns. You do realize that people will mostly contact you by phone, right? And not only will they be rude, but you'll also get your share of idiots who will just mess with you. It's kind of like their idea of fun, isn't it? There's no shortage of weirdos either. People who get a kick out of talking to strangers like you. But Evelyn wasn't backing down. She was set on this. "Babe, don't worry. I won't let them get to me. I'll ignore the jokes and handle it," she reassured me. After all the paperwork was done, Evelyn received an invitation to join the training course. It was set up as an online conference, and about 30 people signed up. The coach went over the rules of sales, credit conditions, and other smaller details. There were tasks to complete in real time, and Evelyn was really engaged. She jumped in with both feet. Anthony, another student, didn't fall behind either. Most of the other participants sort of dropped off, but the coach got intrigued by the little competition between Evelyn and Anthony. In the end, both of them scored top marks and earned good pay. Once the training was done, Evelyn and Anthony found themselves in the same work group. The group had a messaging channel where all the operators from this department could share problems and chat. They helped each other out a lot, which made sense. Newcomers often do better when they have someone in the same boat. A friend won't judge a mistake and will always lend a hand. Evelyn worked in our apartment and Anthony worked in another city. There were 20 people in their group from all over the country, led by Christopher. Evelyn had been working there for 6 months, and she liked the new job. They paid well for it, and I was still working as a lawyer. When my vacation started in July, Evelyn suggested that we go to the coast. At first, I didn't really like the idea. "Wait, how are you even going to do this? Thousands of kilometers from the ocean? You don't have a driver's license, and I can't drive that far." "Don't worry about it, Anthony," she said. "We'll stay at roadside hotels and relax, and then we'll go to Anthony's house. I've already talked to him. He doesn't mind." I couldn't help but roll my eyes. I'd never even met this Anthony in person. "You will," she chuckled. Christopher said that if the operators needed a break, no problem. They could always take 2 weeks off. So, on the first day of our vacation, we headed south, stopping at motels along the way. On the third day, we finally got to my wife's colleague. Anthony lived alone. He had lost his leg in an accident, and his wife couldn't live with him after that, so she left. His pension was small, so he started working remotely to make ends meet. He rarely had visitors, so he was sincerely glad to see us. We had a drink together to celebrate, but I was so exhausted that I went to sleep in the next room while Evelyn and Anthony stayed chatting in the living room. But for some reason, sleep didn't come to me. I started hearing strange noises from the other room and quickly realized what was happening. That's how my wife moans. I couldn't believe it. I walked into the living room and saw them together. They definitely hadn't expected me to show up. Probably thought the alcohol and long trip would throw me off. Evelyn tried to explain herself right away. "Anthony, I'm sorry. I just felt sorry for him. He's an interesting person." I was completely shocked. "If he's such a good guy and you felt sorry for him, then stay with him. Start your own call center here and be happy," I said, completely stunned. Without another word, I got in my car and drove off, completely forgetting that I'd been drinking. My mind was racing with thoughts, and I barely noticed anything around me. Just over a day later, I arrived back at my apartment. Evelyn showed up a week later, stood there for a long time, and begged for my forgiveness. But by then, the divorce was already settled in my mind. Later, I found out that Evelyn had moved, but the relationship with Anthony did not work out. Living together in the same apartment and working remotely, turned out to be more difficult than she had imagined. They started quarreling over little things. Who would cook? Who would go to the store? And Anthony constantly reminded her that he was disabled. And on top of that, he had serious alcohol problems. Soon, Evelyn realized that she was not destined to be with this guy. The city seemed to her like a small backwater town, and yet when she thought about her former place of residence, she realized that no one was waiting for her there either. It was then that she decided to come up with a new plan. Christopher, the head of the group, had casually mentioned that he was single and lived in a 2-bedroom apartment near Washington. The idea of moving there seemed tempting to her. To be closer to her boss, it felt like a step forward. So, Evelyn started thinking about this new idea. Moving to the suburbs and living with Christopher seemed like the beginning of a new life. She went to the capital, but when she appeared, Christopher was completely taken by surprise. He told her. He showed her kindness out of pity, but then accused her of getting one of his best employees drunk. Furious, he kicked her out, telling her to leave and live anywhere but with him. After that, my ex-wife had no choice but to quit her job. She came back to me drunk again, asking for a place to stay. That's when she finally spilled everything. You're messing with the wrong guy, my dear. Now go and find a fool somewhere else. Those were my final words to her. Cheating secrets podsat like me. Next story, my wife Daisy quit her job after a major falling out with her boss. According to her, they were trying to set her up for something shady, something illegal. Once she left, she wasted no time hunting for a new gig, but this time, she was being extra picky. Thankfully, she didn't need to rush. I made good money, so she had the luxury of taking her time. Plus, I never pushed her to work. One evening, she came home all smiles, clearly in a great mood, and said, "Guess what? I landed an amazing job." "Olia, that's awesome. So, where are you working now?" "Do you remember Stanley from my class?" Yes, I remembered him. He was the guy who had tried his best to impress my future wife in college. A real nerd, and of course, she had turned his head. That's the one. Well, you wouldn't believe it. He owns his own company now. A pretty big one, too. No way, really? That's crazy. Yep, he's really into fitness these days. Looks completely different. He was talking about his success with so much enthusiasm that, honestly, I felt a bit uneasy. Is he married? Well, I asked if he was still married, and it turns out he divorced his wife. They've got 2 kids, and apparently, they split time between both of them. Interesting. And you? What's your role in all this? Ah, right, back to the point. He offered me a position in his company. Guess what? Now, I'm his deputy. Wait, hold up. Deputy? Just like that? Well, you know how experienced I am, and I've got a solid track record. So he basically hired me on the spot as his second in command. I was honestly taken aback by the whole thing, but I didn't say anything. Daisy was in such high spirits about her new job, and every evening she came home with stories about her day, sharing everything that had happened. At first, I wasn't too thrilled about her working for Stanley, but after a while I just accepted it. She'd always been frustrated and stressed at her old job, but now she was practically glowing. That shift made me happy too. She would sometimes tell me about Stanley's kids or his latest fitness achievements, and I got used to hearing about him in her daily updates. One evening, Daisy told me she had to go on a business trip for a whole week. "Sweetheart, it's necessary. We need to sign these contracts in person. Over the phone just won't cut it. It's going to be tough, but that's the way it is. If it's necessary, then it's necessary. Go ahead, of course, but don't worry. I'll be here when you get back in a week." Every day while she was gone, Daisy called me. She kept saying how dull and lonely it was, stuck all alone with a pile of paperwork. I missed her a lot, so I was really looking forward to her return. When the day finally came, the end,